Okay, guys, we're up and running finally. Took me a good, I don't know, six, seven tries to get this right. Hopefully, this works for you guys. I want to start by welcoming you all to the league. I mean, we really just started maybe 2 weeks ago. Chris and I were kind of throwing around the idea of starting our own league and going from there. We started putting rules together. Chris had all the rules. I kind of just had input here and there. Then Chris started recruiting guys, and here we are now. Uh, Now we're recruiting on Reddit, Operation Sports. Uh, Not sure where else that they have the guys are looking, but we seem to be filling up pretty quick, and that's definitely a great thing. We have 4 teams left to fill, and I'm pretty confident that we'll get that done within the next day or two. We have guys asking all the time about the league, joining the league, and it seems to be going well for us. So again, thank you all for joining us. We're gonna make this the best league that you've played in and you're gonna play in. Uh, so I got some notes here I'm going to go over, and uh, basically I'm going to cover. Uh, well, I already did how we got started, but what the league's about, our rules, the sliders, and sim football and the future of the league on where where we plan to go and what we're going to do. All right, the mainly the league's about just playing sim football and kind of replicating what you see on Sunday on Madden on your console. Uh, a lot of guys play head to head games or MUT, and it's always the same plays over and over. It kind of sucks. You play the same format, I guess. You'll get out there, you'll see guys running crossers and slants, and especially this year, you see guys just running streaks and throwing it up to their best receiver. They'll go out and they'll get, I guess, an MUT game. They'll get somebody like Randy Moss and just chunk it up deep and let him make a catch. It gets boring after a while playing that way over and over. I started playing Madden in the early '90s, I guess, and as I got older, the more I played it, the more I wanted to play like you see on Sundays. So that's what our goal is going to be in the long term, is going to be to do what we can to make it work that way. Uh, our sliders are going to help to replicate all of that. Uh, the speed threshold's at 50, which in my opinion it helps. A lot of guys want it at 35 or lower, but for me, in college you see guys take a ball like a running back. He'll take the ball on a handoff and run to the outside, get to the outside before anybody can get him. Well, that works in college, but in the NFL that doesn't work. Uh, Everyone has 4 or 5 or lower speed. It seems like even linebackers and linemen, they're all running roughly the same speed. Yeah, a 4.3 is really fast in the 40, but so is a 4.4. It's not that much of a difference when it comes to play on the field. So I think with this where the speed threshold's at, it kind of helps to, I guess, helps your slower guys keep up, even though they're not really that much slower in real life. It helps them to keep up a little bit. It helps with the tosses and sweeps that you see. A lot of guys, and especially on All Pro or even head-to-head games, they run a lot of sweeps. You can't do anything about it unless you have a good fast guy on the outside. With these sliders where they're at, you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Uh, what other sliders we have? The penalties. At first, when we were testing the sliders, Rambo, my dog's on my lap trying to piss me off, I guess. When we first started testing the sliders, we didn't really see that many issues with penalties. But then as we started getting more guys involved and you guys started testing it for us, we were getting way, way too many penalties. It was out of hand, especially the defensive pass interference. It's a killer penalty. You don't need that 7 times a game. Whenever you run every time you run a streak, you get a penalty, and it's 40 yards right there off the bat. It's just that's not fun. Uh, so we went down a good bit on all that, and I think we have it close to where it should be. On average, an average NFL team gets about 6 penalties per game, and I think we're about in that range right now. Just I mean, we've only played 2 weeks, but we seem to be pretty close to that. As far as what types of penalties, it's kind of hard to really go through and get stats on everything on, how many holding calls you should have, how many face masking calls you should have. So we just try to lower the big penalties, the big 15-yard penalties, or the, like I said, pass interference that could be 40, 50 yards. You just try to lower those and let the false starts and the offsides and holding kind of replicate what you see as far as penalties go. Uh, I don't think Chris is as much into having it all the stats look exactly like the NFL. I'm more on the side of that. I want it to look like what you see. You don't want to see 70 a quarterback throwing 70 touchdowns in a season. You don't want to see guys throwing over 600 yards in a game. You don't see that on Sunday, and you shouldn't see it in the league. So yeah, passing is real hard in our league right now. I think as you guys get more used to it, it's not going to be that much of an issue. You're going to see bigger passing games, more passing yards. But until then, just kind of try not to force the ball too much. We're getting a lot of interceptions. I'm one of them. I've thrown, I think, 8 picks in my first 2 games. And granted, I do throw the ball a lot, much more than I run. I'm trying to run more in this league since we have our running sliders bumped up a little bit. Running seems to be a little bit easier. Uh, but still, I mean, as long as you're not forcing the ball, you shouldn't have as many picks as we're seeing right now. You're gonna have to throw the ball away. You're gonna have to take a sack here and there. It's just the way it is. That's what they do on Sundays. That's what we're gonna do here. At least that's our goals. What we want to do here. Uh, as far as why it's so hard, I don't know if it's the time you get to throw the ball, or if it's going to be just the coverage in general. It could be that we don't have as long to pass as most leagues, or maybe that the coverage is just too good and we don't have as much time to pass. There's always room to kind of tinker in there and kind of figure out where we need to go. Which again, that's what we depend on everyone in the league to do. We need input from everyone on where to go from there, because if it's just 2 of us or 4 of us, like the 4 commissioners, me, Chris, Danielle, and Dennis, you know, if us 4 aren't having problems, but the other 28 teams are having problems, then we need to know about it, especially in the case like that. Because if you're not enjoying the game, it's kind of pointless to have the league, which is kind of how I look at it. We all should be enjoying it. If we're not all enjoying it, now granted, if it's you know we have right now we have 29 teams. If we are 28 teams, if we have 25 guys enjoying the league or 20 guys enjoying the league, we can't change something for the other 5 to 8 guys. They just wouldn't make any sense to do that. There are guys, we've already had a guy quit because he didn't like the sliders of the rules and whatnot. I mean, there's not much we can do about that. The league isn't for everyone. A lot of guys are just so used to playing head to head that all they really want is to have even play calling. Well, play calling is great. Calling different plays, switching it up, not calling the same pass plays, the same run plays, sweeps to the outside, drags, slants, streaks. All the typical stuff. All that's great to change up, but there's more to playing sim than just that. The 45-degree rule, the no LS rule, that one there seems to be a big, not a big problem, just a big question for a lot of guys in the league. And basically, the best way to look at it is if you're running north, you can run north, you can run northeast, you can run northwest without using any other button but your left stick. But if you want to go east or directly west, then you have to use the juke or the spin. The reason for that is on Sundays or just in real life, if you want to go outside and try this yourself, you'll see what I'm talking about. If you're running, let's just give a random mile per hour. If you're running 15 miles an hour straight forward, you cannot turn 90 degrees without going slower than 15 miles an hour. You just can't. You're gonna have to stop. And if you're not, if even if you're very very athletic, maybe you don't have to stop. You can make a cut. But for that split second, you're gonna lose some speed. You're not gonna go from 15 miles an hour straight to 15 miles an hour east. It just doesn't happen. In Madden, you can do that. You can run. You can be running full speed forward and then turn all the way left to go east, and then suddenly you haven't lost any speed and you're just blasting to the outside. That the LS rule is just to help with that part of the game. That's something that EA hasn't really fixed yet. It's much better now this year than it has been in the past. Most of the time, you'll see the guy plant his foot, but just to be on the safe side, we're going to follow that rule. The no switch rule, a lot of guys have brought that up too, on understanding what that's about. Really, all it is if you have if you allow a guy to guys to switch, all they need is fast guys on defense. You can just if a guy's running to the outside, you can just grab your linebacker on the outside who's fast and take off to him and get to him before he gets anywhere. If you're playing no switch, if you just have a fast guy on the outside who's kind of dumb, doesn't have good pursuit, doesn't have good tackling, any of the good attributes, he's not going to get there. So it really makes team building much more important. You can't just get fast guys; you have to get smarter guys. You have to have a smart defense, and it helps to combat all of that. We are allowing switching on streak plays though, because this year in Madden we have the catch buttons, and it seems like for the most part you can just chunk it up to a wide receiver and they're going to catch it. Maybe not all Madden right now. It might not be a 90% success rate, but it's definitely above 50% and way above 50%. It's probably closer to 75. So we let guys switch to their DB on the street passes to help combat that too, because it's no fun whenever guys just chunking it up and you can't do anything about it. You got Julio Jones running the street, he chunks up, you're just watching it, knowing that your guy's in position to make the play on defense, and then here comes Julio with a one-handed catch. It just that kind of burns you up after a while. Uh, the fourth down rules. We're, a lot of sim leagues just say no fourth down, or they'll have specific fourth down rules. Uh, Ours are on that end of the specific rules. If you're between your opponent's 35-yard line and your opponent's 49-yard line, and it's 4th and 5 or less, you can go for it. I wouldn't suggest doing it all the time because you're going to get burned. And you don't get the first, and then your opponent has great field position. But I feel, or we all feel in that range, especially if you have an outside team and you're against the wind. If you're at that 35-yard line, you're looking at a 52-yard field goal. It's really hard to make that consistently, and it's even worse if you miss it because then you give up 7 yards and the opponent gets a much better field position. So we feel like in that range, most teams on Sunday would go for it in that position anyway. Most aggressive head coaches, which I feel like most guys in the league are aggressive. That's just maybe because it's a video game, it makes you a little more ballsy and you want to go for it more than you normally would. But that's where the rules at. We haven't talked about if you're inside the 5-yard line on fourth down yet. If you guys want to create a poll and then we can vote on it, or I'll create the poll and you guys can vote. We'll decide where to go with that because personally, I think if you're inside the 5, you should be allowed to go for it, depending on the situation. If you're up by 2 touchdowns, no, you probably shouldn't go for it. But if it's a close game and your opponent's scoring and you just can't stop him, maybe you should go for it. Then maybe we should look at that rule and kind of adjust it a little bit. Speaking of voting, I didn't really talk about that, but every rule can be voted on. Every rule in the league. There are some rules that personally I wouldn't want us to change, like the LS rule and the no switch rule. I feel like those are kind of a statement of a true sim league. But every other rule, you know, if you don't like it, or if you see other guys don't like it, and you're one of those guys, tell a commissioner or do it yourself. You can create a poll, and we'll put a poll up and we'll vote. We'd like to do it only at the beginning of the season. We don't want to change rules in the middle of a season. That it just kind of that just seems weird to me. I wouldn't want to change a rule because if someone were to follow that rule that we changed early in the season and it may affect them on a play, it would just kind of be dick to that guy to do that. So if we can, we'll try to do it at the end of the season, unless it's a beginning of the season. I'm sorry, uh, unless it's a rule that we all think that really needs to be changed, that is kind of hurting the game. Then obviously we make an exception there and change the rule. Uh, Game clock, the chew clock function. Some leagues, like there's a league that Chris and I play in, well, me, Chris, Danielle, and Dennis play in, that you're only allowed to use the chew play clock after a certain time in the game. I don't like that rule. I don't think it makes sense, really, because you see a lot of times in NFL games where the quarterback gets to the line of scrimmage and for the entire drive he has 3, 2, 1, to snap the ball. There's not much time left. Where if we're doing it in game right here, you're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, and it just makes it boring. So really, any time in the game, if you want to use the chew clock function, by all means go for it because it makes sense. If you're trying to keep the opposing offense off the field, you're trying to hold the ball longer, trying to wear his defense down, it's fine. Go ahead and go ahead and use it. All right, I'm gonna go over player signings. This rule I like a lot. It makes sense. I know there's some guys that they don't agree with it. They don't see why it works, but the 30% of the signing bonus of the total of the player salary on the signing bonus, it makes sense because whenever free agency comes around, your bonus money comes directly out of the funds that your team made. In owner mode, you don't have unlimited funds like you would on coach mode. So if your team has, let's say, $50 million in funds, then you only have $50 million in bonus money to give out. You can go over that. The game will let you go into negative, but if you stay in negative for over a year, it's going to kick you out and you're going to be out of the league. Which we haven't talked about what will happen in that situation, but I would imagine that we would lean toward if you get kicked out because of funds, then you're just out of the league. You wouldn't be allowed back in. I think that'd be the most fair way to do it. We don't want guys cheating the system and staying in negatives all the time and then getting back. And yeah, it's just that's messy. It's not right. We're gonna try to avoid that. But again, I'll talk to the other commissioners about that and we'll see what they want to do. Uh, but yeah, in free agency, at the end of the season, everyone decides who they want to sign. This guy, that guy. You start putting in money. You start seeing how much money you're spending. You see that you're offering, let's say, I don't know. Let me think of a player, a big player. If Odell Beckham goes on the free agent market, which will never happen, but let's say he does, and it's going to cost you 50 million in signing bonuses to sign that guy. Well, that's fine if you want to be the guy to give him 50 million, but if you only have 50 million to spend, that's it. That's the only guy you can sign in free agency. So if anyone else is on the market, like Aaron Donald, who's a great defensive tackle, you can't bid on him because you don't have the money to sign that guy. In fact, I don't think the game will let you if you're out of funds to sign to even put a bid on them. The player positions, I think this is one of the last ones that I'm going to go over today. Uh, Player position changes at least. You don't want guys taking safeties and putting them into the middle linebacker position or the outside linebacker position. It doesn't. The guys in the NFL don't do that. There are guys that have made the switch. Brian Urlacher came out of college as a safety, went to middle linebacker, but he's a much bigger much bigger safety than the average NFL safety. Uh, I want to say Cam Chancellor right now is currently the only safety that could be moved to linebacker. But honestly, moving Cam Chancellor to linebacker wouldn't make any sense. He's too good in the backfield. I mean, in the secondary. So moving him wouldn't make enough sense to do that. Some leagues they prefer if any position change, you send it into the commissioners and they vote on it. I don't think that's necessary. I think the weight limits that we have are good enough. I think it gets you by. I had a question the other day about if you draft a guy as a safety or a cornerback. I forget which one it was, and didn't meet the weight requirements. What should he do? Well, in that just situation, if you drafted the guy in that position and he doesn't meet the uh, the weight limit, that's fine. He can play that position. That's just Madden being Madden, EA being EA. So we're gonna go with that. The last thing I'm gonna go over is the code of conduct. We had to boot a guy yesterday. He was kind of being a dick to be honest about it. He was bitching about the rules, bitching about this, bitching about that. Kind of got confrontational. Uh, we have a zero tolerance policy for any aggressive or negative talk in the chat. We try to be lenient with it. The guys are going to get heated. They're going to say things here and there. It's understandable. We're all competitive. You're going to get hot. It's fine. But if you're asked to stop, you need to stop. Don't keep going because you're going to get kicked out. Now, let's say you do get booted out of the chat. That doesn't mean you're out of the league. That just means you're going to be basically put in timeout for the next hour or so, or until after the game's over. Uh, because some guys just can't help themselves. We don't want to kick those guys out, on the first or the first time it happens, I guess. But you don't want it to happen over and over either. If it happens more than once, obviously there's going to be there's going to be an issue, and you may end up getting booted out of the league. But just if you get pissed off during the game, or if your opponent's doing something that you feel isn't in the, I guess, in the spirit of a sim league or our rules, just send a PM to a commissioner, or during the game or after the game, whichever way you want to do it, and let us know. Also, if the game isn't on Twitch, being streamed, and you have no proof of it, we can't help you. You can bitch to us anyway. We're gonna listen, but all we can tell you is we're gonna watch for it, because if we have no proof of it, there's nothing we can do. Which I'm sure you all feel like that would make sense, because I can't just take one guy's word for it. If one guy tells me this guy's running the same play over and over, well, just because you're saying that he is doesn't mean necessarily that he is. You see it too often. Guys start complaining, and they think they saw something that they didn't really see, and it just leads to a whole nother debacle. Okay, well, that's going to be it for our first podcast. I really just wanted to run through the rules and kind of see how this whole podcast thing works on Google Hangouts. I've never done one before. Uh, I really just started researching it last night on how to do it, and set it up this morning, and figured I'd go ahead and knock it out today. And it seems like it's all coming together there. But again, I want to thank you all for joining the league, and helping us to get off to a good start. We're 4 teams away from being full, and we're going to get there. Just be patient with us, and hope all you guys enjoy all your time in the league. Thank you.